Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. The Republicans have unfortunately, in the last 15 years, become the party of the big lie. And one of the lies that they're trying to shove down your throat is the idea that a national debt will kill our economy, and that national debt is run up by Democrats going crazy with wild spending on big government. I've got news for you. There is a problem with debt, especially with the kind of debt Republicans frequently talk about, the debt we're laying on the shoulders of our children and our grandchildren. But it's the Republicans who are responsible for that debt. They are responsible for $7 trillion in debt being loaded on the shoulders of you, if you are under the age of 30, and your kids, if you are over the age of 30, and their kids. Here's how it works. Because they hate big government, and because infrastructure has to be maintained by a government, a functioning government, the Republicans have put off the necessary repairs and upgrades to our infrastructure. They've put it off so badly. We have roads that are crumbling. Canal Street, which I hit when I'm coming from Newark Airport back out to Park Slope, Brooklyn, where I live, has so many potholes, it's a lie to call it a road. Your cab bounces up and down through every pothole. It's a deteriorating street, and so are the highways of America. So, more important are the water systems under our cities, which are way past their expiration date. They need to be replaced. Our infrastructure is so bad that telephone companies have a hard time hooking you up to a decent Wi-Fi signal in some places. Wi-Fi is not ubiquitous. It's not with us everywhere. It's only with us in tiny little pockets, hotspots. But the big repair problems are in things like roads and bridges. If bridges are allowed to crumble, when they go down, they will take normal drivers like you and me down with them, and it won't be a pretty sight. Do you know how much Republicans have deferred, have put off in infrastructure spending? $3.7 trillion worth. That's $3.7 trillion of a genuine form of debt that they are loading on the shoulders of the young of today, their kids, and the kids that come after them. But that's not all. That's not entirely where the $6 trillion of deficit that the Republicans are loading on us all comes from. In addition to the $3.7 trillion for infrastructure, there's $1.2 trillion in student loan. And that student loan, though student loan does make it possible for a lot of kids to go to college who would never have been able to go before, when they get out of college, they have a hangman's noose around their neck. They cannot follow their bliss, to quote Joseph Campbell. They can't do the jobs that excite them the most. They can't do the jobs that would allow them to make the greatest contribution to a vibrant American economy. They must go wherever the money is. Why? Because some of them will be paying off student loan debts into their 50s. And the student loan debt will be like a ball of lead chained around their ankles. Will keep them from flying as high as we need people to fly in order to make this economy competitive with the economy of China. The third source of the debt Republican policies are laying on you, me, our kids, and our grandkids is the military spending. We spend $1 trillion a year minimum on military stuff. Now, it's worth it when we are training soldiers to be the best soldiers we hope in the world. We're not quite sure. We tell ourselves that all the time, but a lot of the things we tell ourselves are not really true. It's worth it. Basically, that's what's really worth it. Now, to be effective, a soldier has to have equipment that is better than the equipment of the enemy. The problem is, a good part of that $1 trillion is being siphoned off in corporate profits by companies that want to sell the military substandard hardware for our soldiers. They sell us rifles that won't work when it's muddy. Have you ever heard of a war in which it didn't get muddy some of the times? Why do bandits and terrorists all over the world use a Soviet-designed weapon, the the AK-47, and not use American rifles, because American rifles are very persnickety, and there are many circumstances under which they just plain don't work. Whoever is making those rifles deserves to be hung, because they're committing treason against the United States of America. They are making sure that when there's a serious war, we will lose. They are killing our soldiers by giving them inadequate weapons. But it doesn't just stop at small things like rifles. It also goes to big things. The F-35 fighter, depending on who's doing the accounting, costs between $120 million and $200 million for one plane. And according to some critics, it's a plane that doesn't work. In other words, it is said that if an F-35 fighter, a $1 trillion program fighter, went into battle with a 1952 MiG, the F-35 would lose. And yet we are cranking out these faulty fighters at an enormous cost. Where is the money going? It's producing giant profits for the space military industrial complex. The same thing is true for another weapon that disadvantages us instead of advantaging us, that makes us insecure rather than secure. It's the Global Hawk. The Global Hawk is an autonomous spy vehicle, an autonomous plane. It's meant to replace the U-2, which has been in service since the 1950s and has had product upgrades in the 1970s and 1980s that basically make it a new plane. Well, replacing a 1950s-era plane sounds like an absolute necessity, right? But can the Global Hawk cut it? The U-2 flies at 70,000 feet. And one thing we learned in the 1950s was that already at 70,000 feet, the Russians could bring down a U-2 with a missile, which they did when they hit the U-2 that Gary Powers was flying over Russia and took him as a captive. You would think that a more modern weapon would fly far higher, let's say 120,000 feet. But does the Global Hawk do that? No. The Global Hawk flies at 50,000 feet, 20,000 feet lower than U-2, which makes it far more vulnerable to being shot out of the sky. In terms of its payload of sensors, the stuff we really care about, the stuff that does the spying for us, the U-2 carries twice the payload of sensors as a Global Hawk. And it is said that the Global Hawk cannot fly in bad weather. Well, I'm sorry. Wars are accompanied very frequently, just as weddings are, by bad weather. And we haven't learned how to do anything about it. The Global Hawk is not a weapon designed to actually achieve a military purpose and actually increase your security and mine. It is a weapon system designed to put money in the pockets of the small number of corporations, giant corporations, mega corporations, in the space military industrial complex. It is designed to put so much money in their pockets that they can spread that money around to senators and congressmen as campaign contributions, so they can spread the making of the weapons to as many states as possible, so they can kidnap, seduce, and recruit as many congressmen and senators as possible through campaign contributions and the promise of local jobs. The F-35 is made in a total of 45 out of the 50 states. Its components are made in 45 of the 50 states of America. Is that because that's an efficient way to produce a high-quality aircraft, an aircraft smarter that can fly higher and faster than the aircraft of our enemies? No, it's a remarkably inefficient way to do it. So why do the space military industrial complex contractors who make the F-35 spread the jobs to 45 states? So that they have a good excuse for putting a lot of campaign contributions in the pockets of senators and congressmen within those states, so that when they want to push an obsolete, antiquated, seriously flawed weapon like the, oh God, what is it called? We were just talking about it. At any rate, like this new autonomous spy plane, that no matter how flawed it is, no matter how much it puts us at a disadvantage as we go up against China, which is making high-quality weapons, trying to ape ours and go beyond them. The Global Hawk, if they want to shove a Global Hawk down our throats, a giant boondoggle, They've got all the congressmen and senators they need lined up with them. That's why they spread the jobs around, so they can spread the campaign contributions around, and campaign contributions are the modern equivalent of bribes. Period. If I give you a campaign contribution and it's huge, you will always take my phone call and you will always try to do things the way I want you to do them. You will be bought and paid for. So, the Republicans are telling you that the Democrats are the party of tax and spend that run up the huge deficits. Actually, if you track deficits, they go up under Republican presidents, they level off under Democratic presidents, they go back up again under Republican presidents. The idea that the Democratic Party is the party of huge deficits and huge burdens for our children and our grandchildren is total falsity. It's total falseness. Because there is a party that loads enormous deficits onto the shoulders of our kids. $1.2 trillion in student loans, $3.6 trillion in infrastructure that hasn't been taken care of. It hasn't been repaired and replaced. It certainly hasn't been modernized. And $1 trillion, much of which is wasted because it simply goes into the bank accounts of the companies who give us faulty weapons system. Do not be fooled by political slogans. They often mask a truth that's the very opposite of what the slogan says. This is Howard the Humongous, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make, or, want to know why? Ask how. And now for that seditious, slimy, sleazy, silver, little off button. I think I've got it.